You represent an era we've moved on from. That's what she said before sliding the termination papers across the glass table without even looking up. Just like that. 2 decades, gone. Not a thank you, not even eye contact. I didn't flinch, I didn't speak. I just watched the tip of her pen tap twice against the corner of the page, like she was already thinking about lunch. My name's Mark Vance, I'm 47 years old. Until about 10 minutes ago, I was Senior Vice President of Revenue Strategy at Alderholt Dynamics, a mid-sized tech firm that ballooned into a billion-dollar pipeline over the last 6 years. My team, just 14 people, was responsible for generating over 63% of that company's entire recurring revenue stream. Every scalable sales channel, every optimized conversion tree, every international expansion model, they came from my desk. And now, I'm officially redundant. She used the word refresh, said the board was exploring generational realignment. All very polished corporate death speak. I didn't interrupt, not because I agreed, but because I already knew how this scene ends. The new CEO, Vanessa Dale, 32, Stanford MBA, came in like a storm 6 weeks ago. Moved fast, smiled tight, carried a MacBook like a sidearm. Her first move was cutting middle management. Her second was bleeding legacy leadership dry under the guise of innovation. I knew my number was coming up. I just didn't expect it this soon, or this cold. She slid the papers closer. We're grateful for your contributions, Mark. Your frameworks were foundational, but we need more fluid minds now. Adaptability over experience. That one hit harder than I expected. I spent years adapting, learning every new platform, every shift in analytics philosophy, every demand change. I didn't coast, I evolved, quietly, methodically. But you can't out-train a narrative, and hers was clear. I wasn't a leader, I was a relic. I signed. Not because I agreed, but because I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of a rebuttal. I stood up, extended my hand. She hesitated, then took it. Good luck, I said, because she'd need it. Then I walked out, not slow, not fast, just steady. Past the open plan floor where my team used to camp out with cold coffee and hot deadlines. Past the collaboration hubs that replaced real offices. Past the performance dashboard still showing green from the last quarter I carried on my back. Nobody looked up, except her. Elena, junior analyst, 2 years in. Sharp eyes behind black glasses. She was standing by the printer, holding a thick folder of churn metrics. As I passed, she slipped a small folded Post-it into my hand. No words, just contact. I didn't stop walking. I didn't read it until I reached my office. Not mine anymore, technically, but the nameplate was still there. I shut the door behind me and opened the note. They're making a huge mistake. If you build something new, I want in. 5 seconds. That's all it took to feel something other than loss. I looked around the space. Whiteboard still smeared with strategy flowcharts. A dusty corner where my old leather bag lived under the desk. The photo of my daughter tucked behind the monitor. She's 21 now. College, pre-law. I missed 3 of her birthdays thanks to revenue launches and overnight war rooms. I used to tell myself it was worth it until today. I started packing, quietly, no ceremony, just movement. My notebooks, 2 of them full of handwritten tweaks and algorithms I never uploaded to the cloud. 1 framed award, Architect of the Year, from the very board now pretending I never existed. A pair of cufflinks I never wore. A charger that only worked at one weird angle. Funny what you collect when you're building your legacy. I remembered the nights I stayed past midnight, running cost per lead simulations while the janitors vacuumed around me. The hotel lobbies in Denver and Singapore, pitching VPs who didn't even remember my name by the time I landed back home. The time I got pneumonia and still showed up to the Q3 summit because the pipeline was on fire. Legacy, I thought, means nothing now. I walked out with 1 box in my arms. Nobody said goodbye, nobody dared. In the elevator, I finally exhaled. Not sadness, not yet. Just silence. Outside, the afternoon air felt too bright, too loud. I sat in my car and stared at the dashboard for a long time. No music, no calls, just breathe. They think I'm finished. Vanessa thinks she's erased me, but what she doesn't realize is I've been erased before. Every pivot I've survived, every shift I've endured, it all built muscle she's never had to grow. She was handed a title. I earned scars. They want fresh minds. I'll give them one. Mine. Sharpened. But not for them. For something better. Something I own this time. And when they come knocking, because they will, it won't be for forgiveness. It'll be for help. And I'll smile. Just like she did. The first meeting happened at a corner table in a coffee shop that smelled more like ambition than espresso. You know the kind? Open brick, Edison bulbs, laptops everywhere. Elena was already there when I arrived, tapping something into her tablet like it was her last day on Earth. She looked up and smiled, but it wasn't casual. It was the kind of smile you give someone when you're betting on them with your rent money. "I'm in," she said, before I even sat down. "No pitch?" I asked. "I watched them fumble your work. That was the pitch." We spent 2 hours sketching on napkins in her digital pad, revenue scaffolds, churn intercept flows, and a modular framework I'd been quietly tweaking for years, but never deployed. Alderholt always wanted safe, repeatable systems. Now, I had no one to hold me back. That night, I made 21 calls. 4 went to voicemail. 9 were polite but cautious. And 8 said the words I didn't realize I needed to hear. We were waiting for this. The next 2 weeks were a blur of meetings in low-key locations, diners, parks, shared workspaces. I met with people who used to sit across from me in long boardroom tables, now speaking in hushed tones over scrambled eggs. They hated the new regime, but couldn't say it aloud. The fear was palpable. Vanessa had poisoned the culture fast. One client, a telecom VP I helped turn around 3/4 of losses for, leaned in and whispered, "They kept your playbook, but lost the person who wrote it." Then he signed a 6-month consulting contract with me on the spot. I didn't celebrate. I went home and stared at my whiteboard. The frameworks came back like muscle memory. I didn't need flashy branding or mission statements. I needed results. A lean, ruthless consulting firm focused on measurable growth and ROI. No fluff, no jargon, just precision. I called it Framework West because I'd always built the best things when I worked late and watched the sunset burn orange over the office skyline. I leased a second-floor suite above a forgotten Thai restaurant. It had flickering fluorescent lights, carpet from the 90s, and a door that stuck in the frame. Perfect. No distractions, no illusion of grandeur. The first hire was Elena. The second was Malcolm, my former analytics lead. He left Alderholt 3 months before I was pushed out. Said the writing was on the wall. Now he was standing in my tiny office holding 2 black coffees and a grin. "You're building something real," he said. "Not pretty, not loud, real. I've missed that." I didn't have payroll yet. No health plan, no marketing department, just 3 people and a hunger that felt older than any algorithm we could run. Then came the emails. 3 of our former clients sent the same message, almost word for word. "Are you available for a short-term advisory engagement?" Discretion appreciated. They didn't want to leave Alderholt, but they didn't trust it anymore. The numbers were shifting. The fresh minds weren't delivering. One client showed me a new pricing model Vanessa's team had pushed through, without understanding seasonal variances. It cost them $2.4 million in under 30 days. "You were never a luxury," he said. "You were infrastructure." Within 6 weeks, 3 major accounts quietly jumped ship and followed me to Framework West. No headlines, no press releases, just contracts and capital. I kept the operation small. We didn't chase buzz. We chased friction points and turned them into margins. We didn't advertise. We listened. Word traveled faster than I expected. But even as momentum built, something in me stayed cold. Late at night, I'd sit alone in the office, lights low, staring at the whiteboard. I'd redraw flowcharts, erase them, redraw them again. Not because they were wrong, but because the anger hadn't gone anywhere. I kept thinking about that room, that glass desk, the way she didn't even look up when she fired me. It wasn't the job I missed. It was the principle. You don't erase 20 years with a buzzword and a signature. You don't replace loyalty with branding. They didn't fire a manager. They fired the foundation. And now, I was watching them try to balance on the hollowed-out version of my work. The difference? I had the original blueprint. And now, I had the freedom to use it however I wanted. They thought I was building a business, but I was building something else. A quiet force. The kind you don't see coming until it's already inside your walls. And this time, it belonged to me. I first heard about the memo in the parking lot of a client site, standing next to my car, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. Malcolm sent it over with no subject line, just a PDF attachment labeled VD Exec Comms Internal, the kind of file that shouldn't exist outside a company's firewall. I opened it, read the first paragraph, then the second, and by the third, I started laughing. Quiet, bitter, airless laughter that barely reached my chest. Vanessa had circulated it to Alderholt's senior leadership team, a vision reinforcement memo, riddled with buzzwords and defensive positioning, but one line stood out in cold clarity. Legacy personnel, while previously reliable, were never instrumental in the company's core innovation strategy. I'd built the revenue model, designed the churn analytics they still used, trained the damn team that was now fumbling the bag in real time, and now I was a footnote in her email, a relic, again. The timing couldn't have been worse for her. The board was under pressure. Their IPO countdown had dropped to 87 days. Meanwhile, Framework West had just signed a 3-year strategic contract with Coronova Ventures, a capital group that had previously been one of Alderholt's earliest and loudest supporters. Coronova wanted to disrupt the same mid-tier B2B vertical. Alderholt thought they'd locked up. Now they wanted me to architect the disruption. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. One of their partners, a sharp-tired man named Harris, shook my hand in our first meeting and said, "You've seen the skeleton. We want to build the machine." We weren't poaching. We were targeting gaps. Gaps Vanessa created by gutting anything that didn't fit her definition of modern. We just happened to be better, faster, and quieter. The phone started ringing more. People I hadn't heard from in years, old project leads, former VPs, even a couple board members' assistants, all just checking in. That's when the email came. Anonymous sender, Proton mail address, subject line, thought you should know. The body was short. She didn't get board approval to terminate you. It was a unilateral action. She spun it afterward to frame it as part of a generational reset. The data team is crumbling. Revenues dropped 11% quarter over quarter. They're panicking. Attached was a screenshot of a Slack message thread. Vanessa telling a senior exec, he was a symbol. We had to move forward. The board will align once results come in. But the results weren't coming in. They were bleeding. And now they wanted to know if the symbol would come back. I got the call the following Tuesday. Private number, male voice, crisp, polite, mid-level executive, former colleague. Let's call him Shane. "Mark," he said, after a pause too long to be professional, "the board is looking for stabilizing figures. There's concern about direction." "Direction?" I asked. "There's internal appetite," he continued, "to bring you in as a strategic consultant, high visibility, just long enough to restore confidence, especially with institutional investors." "High visibility," I repeated. "Figurehead, really," he admitted. "Optics matter right now. Familiar face, trusted track record. You'd have discretion and full public reinstatement if that's important." It wasn't. I let the silence stretch. Then I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "She called me obsolete," I said. "Told me I represented an era they were moving on from." Shane cleared his throat. "Sometimes vision needs course correction." "No thanks," I said. "I'm not interested in being a face on a brochure. I'm busy building something that doesn't need salvaging." "Are you sure?" "The offer will come from the board next." "I hope it does," I said. "I want them to know what I turned down." He didn't try to argue. He just said, "Understood," and hung up. I sat back in my chair, watching the lights flicker in the cheap office ceiling above me. Elena glanced up from her laptop, sensing something. "They call?" she asked. "Yep." "And?" "They want me back." She raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "As a figurehead, consultant, stabilizer." "And you said?" "No." She smiled. "Good." Malcolm leaned in from the doorway, holding a printout. "You'll like this?" It was a chart, churn data. 3 of Alderholt's top accounts had canceled within the last 10 days. Quietly, no public statements, just severed ties. One of those accounts was now signed with us. They hadn't even noticed. Alderholt was on fire. And Vanessa? She'd finally found the panic button. Only problem? It was wired to her own seat. They didn't put me on the main stage, no keynote, no fireside chat, just a name on a panel listing tucked into the second-day breakout schedule under emerging strategic growth firms. Which was fine. I wasn't there to talk. I was there to watch. I showed up in a charcoal suit that fit better than anything I ever wore at Alderholt. Clean shave, no tie, just enough polish to pass as established, but not enough to look like I was trying. Malcolm flanked my left. Elena handled logistics, and in my inside coat pocket, I carried a signed $12 million engagement letter from a global logistics firm looking to restructure every piece of their revenue chain. Framework West had just landed its biggest contract, and Alderholt, well, they were still trying to figure out why 5 of their anchor clients vanished without a press release. The conference floor buzzed like it always does, too many egos, not enough chairs, a dozen VC reps walking fast with Bluetooth headsets and dead eyes. I wasn't anyone's center of gravity, but heads turned, a few double takes, 1 or 2 curious handshakes. Then the press showed up. A mid-tier tech news outlet had caught wind of the Cornova shift, the quiet bleed from Alderholt, and the massive logistics deal. The article went live that morning. The mine they tried to replace just replaced them. My photo was in it, cropped from a LinkedIn event 3 years ago, eyes half closed and smiling in that awkward, caught mid-nod kind of way. I read it over coffee, didn't repost it, didn't even mention it to the team, but I knew Vanessa would see it. Hell, someone probably printed it and dropped it on her desk. Later that day, I stood near the back of the expo hall, watching a product demo, when a familiar voice called my name. Software nervous, calculated. Mark. I turned. It was Dana, one of Alderholt's former product managers. She looked tired, the kind of tired you don't cure with sleep. She trailed off, eyes flicking toward the booth she'd wandered from. Just wanted to say congrats, words getting around. Appreciate it, I said. She hesitated, then leaned in slightly. They're sending resumes, not officially, but you'll probably see a few familiar names soon. I nodded. They'll get fair shots. She half smiled. They just want to work somewhere that isn't run on fear. Later that evening, Elena forwarded me an internal message from a private inbox, board member, alias. The subject line was simple, off the record. The body was even shorter. If you were open to it, some of us would welcome your strategic counsel in a private capacity. Discretion guaranteed. I didn't reply. They had my number if they really meant it. Then came the public statement. Vanessa went on record with a financial blog, citing Framework West as a promising firm led by a former Alderholt employee who contributed meaningfully during his time. She smiled in the photo, but her eyes didn't. We wish him well, she said. But the quote was followed by an analyst note questioning Alderholt's leadership stability ahead of the IPO. The memo had leaked weeks ago. Investors weren't stupid. They knew when blood was in the water. That night, Malcolm sent me a file, no context, just a PDF titled draftresignation.vd. It was a scanned document, 1 page, date blank, signature line bare, but her name was typed at the top. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't cheer, didn't forward it, didn't call anyone. Instead, I closed the file, took a long breath, and poured myself a drink. We weren't done, not even close. The wins kept coming. Small firms, big firms, old contacts, new introductions. We didn't scale fast, we scaled right. Every deal was a quiet message. Legacy isn't dead, wisdom isn't obsolete, and loyalty? Loyalty is just smart business if you know how to wield it. People thought I was getting revenge, but revenge is loud, flashy, temporary. I wasn't building revenge, I was building proof. Proof that discipline still mattered, that quiet builders could still beat noisy disruptors, that the world didn't need another shiny product. It needed people who understood why the last one worked. I never spoke Vanessa's name in interviews. I didn't need to. Every contract we signed did the talking for me. Every client who left her world for mine added weight to the story I didn't have to tell. And I knew, somewhere behind a closed door in a too-bright office, she was watching it all. Not because I wanted her to, but because there was nothing else she could do. The office isn't much to look at from the outside, 2 floors above a discount print shop, just off a quiet downtown block that smells like roasted beans in the morning and wet pavement by noon. But inside it hums, not with noise, but with certainty. Framework. West isn't a startup anymore. It's something rarer, focused, intentional, no bloat, no flash. Just a lean core of specialists who know exactly why they're here. Malcolm handles analytics with his usual quiet precision. Elena oversees ops like a conductor who doesn't need a baton. And our newer hires, they're sharp, grateful, hungry in the right ways. Every project we take on has a purpose. We don't chase the algorithm of the week. We solve, deliver, exit, then do it again. Clients don't ask for logos or launch parties. They ask for results, and they get them. This morning, I arrived early, earlier than usual. The place was still stretching itself awake, lights low, monitors dark. I unlocked the door, brewed a coffee, and stood at the window while the sun cracked over the rooftops. The city hadn't changed much, but I had. The quiet now feels earned. I was reviewing a proposal when I heard the knock, software almost hesitant. Elena peeked in. Got someone asking for 5 minutes. Who? She smiled. The Post-it girl. Elena stepped aside, and there she was. Jules, junior analyst, newest member of our team. She was the one who handed me that note the day I walked out of Alderholt without a word. I still had it, tucked in a drawer. I hadn't told her that. Got a second? She asked. Always. She stepped in, closed the door gently, and sat across from me. I've been meaning to ask you something. I set down the folder. Shoot. She hesitated, then said, Do you ever wish you'd fought to stay? The question hung in the air, soft but solid. I leaned back in my chair, looking at her. Not the question, really, but what it meant. The way younger professionals try to measure risk against regret. No, I said. Not for a second. She looked surprised. Really? I nodded. I didn't need to fight for a seat at their table. I just needed to build a better one. She exhaled through a smile. Fair. What made you ask? She shrugged, but there was weight behind it. I was talking to a friend. He's still over there. He says they delayed the IPO again. Lost another 2 clients. Vanessa's gone. She resigned. Quietly. I nodded. That's how she operated. I imagine it's how she exited too. She hesitated. You could have torched the place. People expected it. I know. But you didn't. I didn't need to, I said. That's the difference between revenge and proof. She sat with that for a while, then stood. Thanks for answering. Thanks for asking. She left the room the same way she'd entered, soft, respectful, a little curious. She's going to be good, maybe better than I ever was. I gathered my things, slipped the folder into my bag, and climbed the stairs to the rooftop. We don't own the building yet, but the landlord gave us access. Said he liked what we were doing. The air up there was clean, honest, the kind of quiet that asks nothing from you except to breathe. I sipped my coffee, watching the sun climb over the glass towers downtown. I thought about Alderholt. Their valuation had dropped 18% since the last quarter. 2 of their competitors were now our clients. Vanessa hadn't updated her LinkedIn. Their board was restructuring. But I didn't feel triumphant, just still. There was a time when all I wanted was to be seen, recognized, given credit. Now, I just want to build. They said I was outdated, but I was never a relic. I was the blueprint. And this time, the ink doesn't bleed.